Ya no entiendo más. Porque esto ha pasado. Ya no entiendo más. Porque esto ha pasado. Ya no entiendo más. Ya no entiendo más. No te miro más con la vista. Escucha lo que digo en esta pista. Mis demonios ya saben que soy. Mis demonios ya saben que soy. Mis demonios ya saben que soy. Mis demonios ya saben que soy lista. Yeah. Tu maldad es ignorar, ignorar. No te creas que me duele lo que diga, diga. Yo soy mi única enemiga, amiga, amiga, yeah. Tu maldad es ignorar, ignorar. No te creas que me duele lo que diga, diga. Yo soy mi única enemiga, amiga, amiga, yeah, 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 yeah. El perreo contra la depresión. Esa vaina no se va sin un blon. No te creas que fue un error. Lo que me hiciste fue un favor. El perreo contra la depresión. Esa vaina no se va sin un blon. Te lo juro que yo estoy mejor. Yeah, yeah. Quédate ahí, que tú no me quieres más, bebé. Que ya lo tuyo yo lo probé. Que tus mentiras no me joden. Es un problema tuyo, 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 tuyo. Es un problema tuyo, 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 tuyo. Tu maldad es ignorar, ignorar. No te creas que me duele lo que diga, diga. Yo soy mi única enemiga, amiga, amiga, yeah. El perreo, el perreo. El perreo, el perreo contra la depresión. Esa vaina no se va sin un blon. No te creas que fue un error. Lo que me hiciste fue un favor. El perreo contra la depresión. Esa vaina no se va sin un blon. Te lo juro que yo estoy mejor. Yeah, yeah. Depresión, depresión, depresión. Depresión, depresión, depresión. Depresión, depresión, depresión. Depresión, depresión, depresión. En serio, gracias. No, pero en serio.
Yes, I'm so glad that song was a hit. This is me every morning driving to work, like blasting the song. So now y'all know, which is amazing. Hi, everyone. Good evening or good afternoon, depending on what coast you're in right now. My name is Justice Rivera, and I am the collectrix and one of the co-authors of Body Autonomy. And I'm so grateful and so excited to be here with some of the other authors and contributors today on our book launch. Today, the book is available anywhere you buy books. So this is amazing. And it has been a journey, y'all. It's been an amazing journey. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But I'm just so grateful you all came to celebrate with us, because that's ultimately what this is. This is a celebration, an opportunity for us to share a little bit of our work, to share it with each other, to share it with you, to hear how it lands. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm also really excited that we'll be joined by a couple national organizations who are doing the work, who can ground the content of body autonomy in the national context and in applicability. So they'll be joining us here today too. Can everyone see my slides?
We can see you, but I can't see your slides.
You cannot see my slides. Okay, good to know. I'm just acting like y'all can see it. Here we go, hold on. What about now? Better? Okay, great. This is the book. If you haven't seen it, you'll be getting your copy soon. I know that advanced copies were arriving recently, which is really exciting. I love all the colors. The inner child of me is very happy about it. And just a little run. I'm really bad at slide. Okay, just a little rundown of what the next hour and a half together is going to look like. We'll have a chance to meet the contributors. We'll talk a little bit about the anthology's backgrounds, and then you will get to hear each author read a segment of their article, which is exciting. And we are going to hear from the organizations that I talked about, New Moon Network and POC Psychedelic Collective. We'll talk about some of the other ways in which you can engage with this collective and the Body Autonomy project. And we tried to leave some time for questions, so hopefully we'll get there. I'm not sure we're a pithy crew. You think I'd get paid by the word, but hopefully we'll get to questions. So before we do that, I would like to open up this space by acknowledging the ways in which people can freely access bodily autonomy in some places more than others. And people can engage with even just this material in some places more than others. I am calling in today from currently occupied Puerto Rico, and want to just have a moment for all currently occupied land from Palestine, Puerto Rico, and beyond, recognizing that we cannot have access to our own bodily autonomy until we are able to access our land, until people are given the ability to have the resources, the natural resources around them, and the freedom of movement beyond just what they can do with their body. And that's a lot what we're going to be talking about. So please join me in a moment to just thank all the lands that we are occupying now. And I'm going to read the dedication that's the first part of this book. I stewarded this book, and I offer this space here together today as an offering to my ancestors who wrote survival into my veins, to all who I have lost in the struggle for freedom and liberation, and to all who continue to raise the collective consciousness. May these words provide knowledge and healing so that all who read them or hear them are activated to move forward with awareness, openness, sincerity, and love. And what I hope we can bring you today is a bold space and a brave space. Of course, I hope we can create a safe space. And I know that in a lot of ways that's subjective, but already everyone is showing up in bravery and with a lot of boldness, because we are talking about the ways in which specific people's bodily autonomy has been attacked, which has led to all of our bodily autonomy being attacked. We're talking about the ways in which sex work and substance use and reproductive rights and LGBTQ identity and activity all have a racialized root and all really serve the same purpose and function of population control and the expansion of federal powers. We're talking about the ways in which the war on sex trafficking mirrors the war on drugs, and how drug war mechanisms are used in different ways to be able to continue to surveil and control racialized populations, even when the drug war isn't used to do that or fails to have utility in specific cases. And we're talking about the ways in which people can reclaim their healing, that they can find pleasure and be okay with that. We can talk about the ways in which we resist and find liberation and love. And those things are not easy to talk about. Sometimes those things are not safe to talk about. And so I encourage everyone to just take a moment and maybe do a body scan and see how you're showing up to this space. And know that we have an hour and a half to be able to talk about these things in ways that maybe in other spaces we're not allowed to. So hopefully share with like people, and that we are entering this space knowing that everyone's coming here with the best intention, and that if conflict should emerge, we are ready for it to be emergent, that we can all handle this together, because this is one of the baddest crews of people I know, the most amazing people. here together and just want to encourage people to have the conversations we need to have today. I'm really excited about that. And in that vein, in that vibe, I wanted to open the floor up to Paola and Izzy, in their article, Drug Policy for Breaking Intergenerational Curses, created an offering and a prayer for intentionality, for intentional dosing, for future generations. And as we continue to open up the space here today, I thought that it would be wonderful if Paola could share that.
Thank you, Justice, and so grateful to be joining you all here today. My name is Paula Graciela Khan. My pronouns are she and they, and I'm currently tuning in from Geneva, Switzerland. I'm here, talking about body autonomy. I'm here monitoring an international treaty on genetic resources and traditional knowledge and lifting up the rights of Indigenous people to their self-determination over genetic resources associated with traditional knowledge. And it's just so strange to be participating in a treaty process when there's an ongoing genocide, or multiple genocides happening. So thank you so much for opening us up in that space of acknowledgement, Justice. And so it really feels important to be in prayer with you all. Okay, so this is an eco-futurist prayer for breaking intergenerational curses by Ismael Lurido Ali and Paula Graciela Khan. All right, so this is a prayer in preparation before dosing, consuming, or sharing substances. Dear ancestors of the multiverse, from void to stardust and everything in between, we who have explored consciousness for time immemorial through evolutions of organic and crystalline molecular metastructures, generations of experimental play, intentional ceremony, and remedies of relief, we pray for healing of the past, present, and future. We pray for the youth drawn to states of altered consciousness, seeking pleasure and escape, creating rites of passage. We pray for the children within us seeking emancipation, witnessing love and belonging. We pray for a revolution of love, realizations of collective awakening, a radical honesty and repaired collective memory, holistic and wholly embodied in all our senses. We pray for grounded and guided initiations and interspecies awakenings that recondition fixations on domination, punishment, and profit. A mass transition where rituals of reckoning and ceremonies for repair halt cycles of harm and spark cycles of healing. We prepare our bodies, hearts, minds, and souls to humbly request a smooth entrance to the portal of eternal creation. We embrace the inner wisdoms you ignite within us to build orbs of ecosystemic safety and care for each other. We sense and embrace the company of our shadow and the guidance of light on our sacred journeys home. We gratefully delight in your everlasting truths of love and freedom, delivered through doses of terrestrial medicines measured with care and precision in the mystical name of awe. We respect the messages you deliver, ecstatic abundance and climactic warnings included. May your magic open portals of love, truth, and creation for maximum favorable phenomena. May we weave the learnings from this experience into reverence for the essential elements that sustain life. May it be so.
Now we can all get high. Just off the vibe. Start sharing the screen again. All right. So you've heard from two of us today, but I really want to give you a chance to meet all the collaborators that are here. This was a community-based project, really through and through. We have community-based editors and reviewers. We had community-based formatters, as well as authors. And oftentimes, if I was writing something, someone else was editing it. If someone else was writing something, I would edit it. And then I'm just so grateful that we were approached by a values-aligned press, Synergetic Press, who was wonderful to work with, wonderful editors, and just really appreciate the partnership with them. And so it's really felt just values aligned and community oriented the whole way through. And so I'd love to give a chance for everyone to introduce yourself, say who you are, your pronouns, where you're based, and then what you contribute to in body autonomy, and what body autonomy means to you, both as a concept or a movement, and then also as a project or an offering. I can start if you all want, but I feel like I've been talking. So.
I can go ahead and
Oh,
start.
yeah. Go for it.
No, but I got you. You're next. My name is Presto. Presto Crespo. I am out of the Bronx, New York. My pronouns are he and him. I currently work for the harm reduction organization Next Distro. I contributed to this project. Thank you for Justice and Synergetic Press for giving me the opportunity. With my article, Black Trans Joy, a love letter to Poppy. So I hope when everybody reads it, you get something from it. It ignites some sort of feeling, and in terms of bodily autonomy, especially like right now during this time, like during a tide of fascism and authoritarianism, like just like always, sort of, right? But and tides or political movements against the body, bodily freedom, and like the constant threat of bodily harm or a lack of bodily autonomy as a Black person, as a queer person, as a trans person, as us as a group, having been denied that, whether it's since chattel slavery or any point after that. So bodily autonomy is very important. And right now requires so much bravery and nerve and discipline to continue to bring up as a topic. And I think we're all making very reasonable but strong demands. And it also means I'm going to be smoking throughout the reading. So enjoy.
Amazing. Hello. I'm Noelle Armstrong. I work with Synergetic Press. My pronouns are she, her. I'm beaming into you from unceded Ohlone territory. I am continuously struck by all of the different and new facets of body autonomy that this book brings to the fore. For me, it's something very sacred and very personal, but necessarily political. I like what Presto said about, these reasonable but strong demands. Yeah, there's just something so communal about this book, and it resonated with communities that I'm already in. So I love to see it front facing in this really bold and exciting way. Feel grateful to be here with you all.
I'll jump in. Hi, y'all. I'm Zara Raven. I just use my name or Z instead of pronouns. I am a mad Black queer mama, former sex worker, and was an organizer on the campaigns to decriminalize sex work in New York, the Decrim New York campaign, and also in Washington, D.C. with Decrim Now DC. And when I think about body autonomy, I think of, it means to me the freedom to choose what to do with our bodies, given our conditions, our contexts, our experiences. Just like knowing that we know best about what we need, whether that's working in the sex industry, using drugs, birthing a child, not birthing a child, expressing our gender. And then beyond autonomy, I believe in justice. So reproductive justice, economic justice, racial justice, gender justice. So like attending to the conditions and the context that we make these choices within. Because that's the other piece that matters, right? Like it's not enough to say, yes, I should be able to trade sex if I want to trade sex, but recognizing that for many of us, especially those who are Black, disabled, poor, queer, and trans, our choices are constrained by racial capitalism. So both and.
I can go next. Hi everyone, Jessica. She, her pronouns. I am currently in unceded Lenape land, Jersey City, New Jersey. And I helped support by reviewing and editing the principles of healing-centered harm reduction. Every time I read them, something new forms in the ways in which I think about the practices of harm reduction centered around healing justice. So thank you, Justice, and everybody for allowing that space for me to be able to constantly think about these and practice these in my own life. And that connects to what bodily autonomy means to me. For many years, I was very disconnected and continue to be disconnected through trauma and, you know, the intersection of being a migrant to this country. And for me, I really think about what it means to no longer be a visitor in my body, no longer to be, you know, both engaging in the same systems of oppression towards myself, and moving towards a loving practice of centering and coming back to being a permanent resident in my own body, and modeling mostly as a politic, as a movement for all the littles in my life, all the folks that are modeling, that see me every day. And it is the hardest thing I am doing in my life. I can tell you that. And so I hope that I get to show all the littles in my life that we can take back what was taken from us. But more so than that, we can really just live in the joy and the bliss that is to be connected, mind and body, for justice and for community, and how interconnected we are.
Hey y'all, I'm Amira. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, and I have a kitten. I'm the writer of the essay in Body Autonomy, Sacred Stripper, Intersections of Religion, Sex Work, Culture, and Consent. And I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my piece where I talk about being a sex worker who's an Arab Muslim woman, as I'm connecting with my own indigenous, natural, ancestral spirituality that's older than Islam, and the different portals we go through on our journey to home and to wholeness within ourselves. And I'm happy to be here with y'all. This means everything to me. I've been an organizer to decriminalize sex work in Louisiana. I've been a community organizer for sex workers and for survivors for years, probably my whole life. And to be able to be in a space like this and commune around the reality and the imagination also of what's possible, what is and what's possible is really special to me. And I do my work with my spiritual community. I have a spiritual community for sex workers and survivors, and you're welcome to join. We just created a new Facebook group that is a free Facebook group, and you're all invited. It's Hoes Are Healers. And it's a space, a spiritual exploration space for sex workers and survivors to explore our experiences and gain support. Thank you for having me here.
There's a couple contributors who joined us who aren't actually participating in this program. So I'll just leave like 10 seconds. If anyone does want to jump in and just say hi, you don't even have to answer the question. If you weren't prepared, we all had some time to prep. But if you do want to shout out your article and the work.
I'll pop in. Hi. I was one of that. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I get to join. I had another conflict. My name's Jaylee Oshiro Brantley, and I am very happy to be a part of this group. And in fact, I think I'm probably the least likely one here to have contributed, but it has been a joy and honor and a very humbling experience to go into what Jessica so articulately described as that process of our own body autonomy. I'm not going to try to improve upon those words because they were great. I just want to say that that resonates very much with me when I think about what body autonomy means. It's a lot of removing barriers from within rather than the barriers externally. And I think that's a process that I am honored to be able to be on right now. And I hope that the chapter I was able to excavate, because there was an excavation, is something that can resonate with you all as well. And my chapter is called Pleasure as an Access Point.
Hey, de nuevo, my name is Justice Rivera, she, they, ella, pronouns. I am so grateful to live in my motherland and currently occupied for the weekend in territory. And I collected this project, I authored some pieces. I'll talk about kind of how all that came. And I really just echo what you all said. So much of that resonated with me. And I've actually started to think about body autonomy as a framework. I think body autonomy is a framework that can help us move from harm reduction to healing, or harm reduction to healing justice. I think that it encompasses all the ways in which we can keep ourselves safe, but then all of the ways in which we hope to keep future generations safe, and that we need to recognize the history that got us here, and we need to abolish and remake so much of that. I think that it really kind of can move across that continuum. I also think that body autonomy is a framework when we see sometimes our liberatory language get co-opted. I think in a lot of ways, harm reduction means so many different things to so many different people. And we saw this in the healing justice sphere, right? When restorative justice was in the courts and started to get co-opted, we saw transformative justice come about. And I think that body autonomy is the what's next to harm reduction. Because it's a way of really saying exactly what we think, that the personal is political. I do this work because I was so shocked when I found out that it was actually, it's not easy, but it's simple, right? To be safe. But like I never had any of those things as a as a former sex worker, as a former injection drug user, as a current lover of psychedelics, right? Like I just never had those things. And it was so illuminating when I found out that it's actually just so simple, and when I could connect to that community, and I just worked to make sure that that it's a lot more accessible and a lot more easy to access for future generations. And I think that body autonomy is a framework that can absolutely get us there. Not to say that others are bad. I think that this is just an addition and an evolution, and I'm really excited to unpack. I think this book unpacks a lot of what that is. And the project has been a wonderful unfolding, a wonderful evolution. It started as my own personal media project. I was given an Open Society Foundation fellowship, media fellowship in 2019 to write one book. That's funny now. One book that could discuss the ways in which the war on sex trafficking was paralleling and mimicking the war on drugs. And I had sought to do that in a way that was like a lot of my favorite narrative nonfictions, where I had different educational pieces that were alongside personal narratives that could bring kind of a heart piece to some of the heavy pieces that were being discussed. And as I did that, it was such a powerful process for me. And I really came to discover deep inside myself in a really embodied way that I had a memoir in me that I thought could be really powerful and needed to be written. But I'd already written so many of these pieces. And at the same time, I'm in community with so many of these amazing activists and healers and artists and writers. And it was just such a wonderful opportunity, right, to have some fellowship money to say, you know what, let's have these essentially accompanying books. Let's have an anthology. I'm just one voice. There's so many amazing people who are here kind of pushing this very similar idea, right, forward. And that's how it really came to be. And I kind of feel like I spent the last 4 years herding wet cats on one hand, right? And I also got to get in the dirt and compost with some of my favorite people. And it was really a beautiful process. And so this is both a birth and a rebirth. We actually self-published a kind of a former iteration of this in last year called Towards Bodily Autonomy. And we actually did really well for a self-published project. I'm really proud to say that was really awesome. And we were approached by Synergetic Press to be able to make the most robust collection that we possibly could. And this is what Body Autonomy is. It's amazing. We have some new pieces. I'm actually going to switch slides here so you can see the table of contents. I keep going one too far. There we go. Our table of contents. So how we were able to expand how this is kind of the biggest, brightest offering is that we got a foreword by Camille Barton. If you're not familiar with Camille Barton, they actually just put out a book called the Tending to Grief Toolkit, which just arrived at my house like a week ago. So I'm really excited to think about how to really be able to navigate grief, not just on my own, right, in my own body, but as a collective process and one that can contribute to collective liberation. We also got an afterword by Cinnamon Love, who is a really famous former adult performer and also runs the BIPOC Collective, who's just a fierce advocate for sex worker rights, especially BIPOC sex worker rights. Really excited that we will be doing some virtual conversations with them. Camille, we're talking with virtually in October. We're going to schedule something with Cinnamon, so please be on the lookout for that. We also were able to get Zara's article, Abolition Means No More Policing, and the Afterlives of Slavery Are Repackaged as Freedom. So that's some of what you'll hear from today. And Rematriating Drugs, Decolonial Perspectives on Substance Use Healthcare and Recovery. Unfortunately, none of those interviewees could be here with us today. There were some conflicts, but it's an amazing piece that I was really grateful to get to interview those folks. And we also were able to get pleasure as an access point, which you just heard from Jay Lee, which is really amazing and gives us so many different prompts to work with. And last but certainly not least, we got Black Trans Joy, a love letter to Poppy, which is just so beautiful. I feel like it ties so many things together. And it's made a really just amazing collection. And clearly I'm biased, but there's some amazing anthologies out there. I'm an anthology lover, and I think that this holds a place right next to Colonize This and some of the most, and pleasure activism and some of the best anthologies there, in my opinion. And as to why this was so important, I actually am going to read my introduction to you. So give me a second just to transition over and pull up my electronic piece. I'm gonna stop sharing so we can get everyone's faces in here. And thank you for your patience. A little bit clunky process. Here we go. Okay. The mainstream media, heavily influenced by police, prosecutors, and carceral feminists, tells us that the presence of the sex trade causes exploitation and is in and of itself exploitative. It cites the demand for sex and sex buyers as the problem. Their solution is to increase penalties and policing of men, largely men of color, who buy or purvey sex, thereby regaining power, filling jail and prison beds, and refinancing criminal legal system budgets that have been reduced from drug policy reform gains. This carceral approach to the sex trade, disguised as a war on sex trafficking, not only has devastating impacts on marginalized communities, but it is also rooted in capitalistic principles that ignore the daily realities of people in the sex trade. Criminalization effectively creates an underground criminal market, which in turn lends itself to exploitation through the prison industrial complex. In the new Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander highlights how language in the 14th Amendment of the US Constitution continues the legacy of antebellum slavery, using prison labor, the war on drugs, and similar criminal legal crusades. The current US strategy to reduce exploitation is exploitative, and it is harmful. The irony is that it harms those that it ostensibly seeks to protect. In this anthology, I seek to engage others who have come to a similar understanding of the ways that pervasive drug war tactics are being used to further surveil and control marginalized populations through the war on sex trafficking. These wars on bodily autonomy are rooted in the gendered, racial, and economic biases encoded in our country's DNA, supported by a constitution that has never evolved in a meaningful way. Body autonomy underscores gendered and racialized history while highlighting the ways that it currently manifests in systems and policies that disproportionately and often unfairly impact BIPOC, women, queer and trans people, immigrants, and other traditionally marginalized communities. The concept of body autonomy was born from queer and trans sex workers and drug users of color and communities who understand this intimately. It was born of people doing what they needed to do to survive and who have been punished because they have persisted. What does it mean to survive? What does survival look like? These questions are at the core of many issues at the nexus of economics, public safety, and public health. And the answers vary widely based on one's vantage point within the social hierarchy. Understanding and honoring survival is necessary to create programs and policies that address and prevent violence and exploitation, including human trafficking. Without the struggle to survive, people would rarely encounter or engage in exploitative situations. If poverty didn't exist, human trafficking would be rare. Media and political messages, propaganda, tell a different story in order to reinforce the status quo. Without critical examination, it is easy to believe that sex trafficking is rampant and that increased state surveillance is necessary to keep suburban children safe from organized crime operations, mainly comprised of men of color. Such messages are reminiscent of drug war propaganda, suggesting that just saying no policies and law enforcement intervention will save white people from drugs used and pushed by people of color in urban cities. The presence and impact of the modern day overdose epidemic within white, rural, and suburban communities shines light on the erroneous and racist extent of such messaging. What does it mean to heal? What do we need to heal? Healing, recovering, and expanding are incredibly personal. There is no one cookie cutter way to heal. Healing is also political. Communities of color hid or buried traditional cultural healing modalities for centuries to minimize the ways in which colonial interests weaponize and/or appropriate indigenous healing methods. How we are allowed to heal and what good healing looks like continues to be literally prescribed by people with the most power and privilege, determining which forms of healing are legitimate and who gets access to them. This book unpacks what it means to heal in America through the lens of healing justice, a liberatory approach that asks us to center individual and collective healing in our fights for survival, freedom, and restitution. We offer the contents of this book to those who are ready to complicate their understanding of survival and healing, to all who are seeking to know more about underground economies, and to everyone who knows that punishment doesn't lead to liberation and wants something different, but might not know where to start or how to continue. Thank you. All right. I am excited to hear from some of the other authors. Do you all have the order queued up on your own, like who goes next? Otherwise, I can queue you up. We're just going in order of the book. Oh, sorry. We're going in order of the book. So next up is Czar.
Oh, did you say me? Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Hi, y'all. So I'm going to be reading from my new essay in the reissue of the book called Abolition Means No More Policing. And I'm just going to read a short excerpt. According to the law, I'm a sex trafficking survivor. And yet, if you search for images that represent child sex trafficking, Black, queer, and trans youth rarely show up in the results. The images on the websites of most anti-trafficking organizations are often young white girls with their hands tied or pale hands forming stop signs with writing in black Sharpie across the palm. The words often say, "Stop," or "Help me," or "I am not for sale." In this popular narrative of sex trafficking, traffickers are strangers preying on innocent white girls, abducting them from nuclear families, and carrying them across state lines. This narrative relies on several myths that uphold racial capitalism: strangers as dangerous, Blackness as criminal, and prisons, policing, and borders as protection. When the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, TVPA, defined sex trafficking as the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel someone to engage in the exchange of sex for resources in federal law in 2000, designating all people under the age of 18 who trade sex for resources as child sex trafficking victims, the moral panic around sex trafficking aligned well with the fear-based messaging of the war on terror. If you see something, say something. In a similar vein, signage across public transit, airports, schools, and hotels have urged people to spot trafficking and report tips to the human trafficking hotline operated by global anti-trafficking organization Polaris, which works closely with law enforcement. Organizations like Polaris and Operation Underground Railroad are primarily led by white people, and yet perversely name themselves after the social movements that guided enslaved Black people to freedom. Like many individuals and organizations that represent the mainstream anti-trafficking movement, they refer to themselves as abolitionists and the sex industry as, quote unquote, modern-day slavery, while advancing carceral responses that grow the prison industrial complex. I'm going to skip forward. By claiming to address sex trafficking through criminalization, these groups show little curiosity about the conditions that lead people to enter the sex trades and the needs expressed by people who trade sex. Most of us were not snatched from an IKEA parking lot by masked men in a white van and forced to enter the sex industry, the way trafficking is portrayed in thousands of viral social media posts. The vast majority of us were harmed and exploited by people we trusted, people we relied on, people we may have even loved. We ran away from homes where we were abused. We were kicked out from homes where our queer and trans identities were rejected. Many of us were even abducted from our homes by the state, kidnapped by the cops known as Child Protective Services workers, who decided that we had inadequate food or housing or supervision, and so displaced us into strangers' homes instead of ensuring that we had all the resources we needed. We entered the sex industry because it helped us survive the impossible circumstances constructed by racial capitalism. Black, queer, and trans survivors are not the perfect poster children for this movement to abolish modern-day slavery, because most of us don't see the sex industry as a form of slavery. Instead, we understand ourselves to be living in what Saidiya Hartman in Scenes of Subjection calls the afterlife of slavery, a context of anti-Black racism upheld through prisons and policing, where Black people are criminalized for everyday acts of survival. For us, the term abolition centers Black liberation and recognizes the prison industrial complex, not the sex industry, as the historical successor of US slavery. I'm just going to read one last part. For prison industrial complex abolitionists, the state is the primary organizer of all violence, recognizing prisons, policing, and borders as inherently violent, and the state as upholding oppressive systems like cis-heteropatriarchy reinforced in structures like the patriarchal nuclear family. Abolition is a practice, a vision, and a way of life that seeks to eradicate all forms of prison, policing, and punishment. The movement for abolition that I work toward seeks to radically restructure society so that everyone can get their needs met. Without borders around family or nation state that strictly define who is a legitimate beneficiary of care, whole communities become responsible for collective care.
That was the first time I got to hear Zara read Z's article. All right, if we are going in order, Jessica, you are up.
I'm up. Okay. Wasn't ready for that. Cool. I'm gonna be reading a couple of the principles of healing-centered harm reduction that build on existing harm reduction principles. Number one, these are not in order, y'all, just some of the ones that I chose. Respond to harm. Healing-centered harm reduction acknowledges that harm is an inevitable part of the human experience. Responding to harm is one of the many ways we learn how to navigate the world. In a world shaped by oppression, harm that has been done lives on in the bodies and communities that have borne the brunt of systemic brutalization. We can condemn harm while also celebrating the resilient beings we have become as a result. Harm partially shapes who we are. We cannot design to eliminate the occurrence of harm. We are currently and always will be responding to and healing from the sweeping harm caused by systems of oppression over the last 500 plus years. The next principle that I chose was allow for difference. Sometimes to become somebody else, you have to become nobody first. You have to let go of your mother and father, the crooked, starving house you grew up in that wanted to devour you and digest you whole. Forget, if you can, all the promises you've made and the lies that you've told. Forget the scars you left 1, 2, 3 times on your left wrist. Forget flowers and killer bees and everyone you've ever known. I'm going to find a place where my shadow ends and my body begins. Close your eyes. I'll see you there. This is a quote by Kai Sheng Thom from Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars. Healing-centered harm reduction recognizes that people experience the world differently. What is harmful or traumatic for one individual may be an act of resilience or joy to another. These perceptions and experiences can evolve over time. We may relate to our harm and our resilience differently as we move into different points in time and space. At the same time, we cannot forget our interconnectedness as a species and inhabitants of the universe. Healing and justice do not have a uniform definition practice, and process. Honor survival. And just because the healing process is hard doesn't mean that all the violence is the same and that we need to address that violence differently. There is not a hierarchy in violence. It's just very important that everyone knows that each thing is not the same. A quote by Shira Hassan from Beyond Survival. Healing-centered harm reduction honors the many ways that survival and healing look without condemning or glorifying how people survive and heal. People do things to survive, and we should honor that resilience, whether it's through drugs, sex, abstinence, or acts considered to be self-harm. We dare not say that one method is better than another. Rather, we celebrate survival and work towards unpacking what methods we want to keep moving into new parts of our lives and which methods we will release and transform. Underscore oppression's impact. Healing-centered harm reduction underscores the impact of shared, individual, and intersecting experiences of anti-Blackness and racism, colonialization, imperialism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, classism, ableism, and other oppressions. In naming systems of oppression, we also name that we all face them differently, intersecting, alone, and as communities. A clear path forward in harm reduction recognizes that we must examine our position within movement spaces and care work, understanding how our positionality affects our capacity and resources to survive, heal, and grow. Demand accountability. We reject reliance on violent and exploitative state-sponsored systems like prisons, detention centers, and civil commitment, where we recognize that our care systems are often embedded or complicit. We hold this tension and struggle together to build anti-violence into being. Holding systems of power and privilege accountable, we address power imbalances through transformative justice models that prioritize restoration over punishment. The state, which perpetuates exploitation and violence, cannot be expected to be the arbiter of justice. Holding people and systems accountable for their violence is part of healing. Accountability and punishment are not the same. Collectively learning, developing, and practicing transformative justice will sustain our efforts towards abolishing state violence. We cannot respond to the institutionalized impunity of the state if our systems of accountability are underdeveloped or not in application. Our principles of healing-centered harm reduction continue to ground us in our work to both vision and operationalize a more just world. Harm reduction's origins through the work and survival of people who use drugs offer many lessons in resilience, care, and health. As harm reduction and parallel movements and philosophies widen to broadly and intentionally consider survival and healing, we offer these principles to guide us towards a communal solidarity that challenges oppressive structures.
Yes. It is just better when I hear y'all read it. It's just better this way. I like it. Thank you so much. Amira, you are next up.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my essay, Sacred Stripper. Goddess worship came naturally to me because I am a goddess. There's the knowledge I was born with, and then there's the knowledge I was given. Or rather, I paid for it. It isn't just one experience, but so many violations and miracles along the way to becoming a real life prophetess. I lead others into the promised land of total mind, body, soul, emotional, sexual, spiritual freedom through the portal of my womb and the divine healing energy I emit. I didn't have to read about the goddesses or study them because they showed themselves to me and they showed me where to go. They told me, I am you. I am in you. They called upon me to make myself in their image and embody them so they may appear in the world more frequently. They told me to dance and to tell my stories. They even called me to become a teacher and empower others like me. Sex workers, spiritually gifted survivors from sacred bloodlines, to become spiritual warriors and fight for our personal and collective sovereignty. Even when so many would label me as worthless, unrapeable, non-human, a problem, I survive and thrive. Survival is coded in my DNA. The goddesses my ancestors worshipped are the same ones who support me in being able to thrive as a non-binary lady of luxury. Even though women in Islam were given unequal rights to men, it was still supposed to be better than before when pagan Arab tribes would commit femicide regularly. I was shocked but not surprised when I read about the goddess worship that was prevalent in pre-Islamic Arabia. It made so much sense. The worship of the cult of Isis and syncretized deities like Ishtar, Inanna, Alat, Al-Uzza was widespread all over North Africa, Southern Europe, Southwest Asia, and South Asia. These deities have different names but core similar values. Alat, Aphrodite, Oshun all evoke beauty and are often evoked through worship in the form of sacred sex rites and rituals to bring fertility, growth, and abundance to an entire community. Al-Uzza was one of the three main goddesses worshipped in the region, and she can be syncretized with Oya in the Yoruba pantheon or Sekhmet in ancient Egypt. Al-Uzza, along with Alat and Manat, were known as the daughters of Allah and were the primary deities worshipped by the tribe which the Prophet Muhammad came from. In the famous satanic verses, quote unquote, of the Quran, Prophet Muhammad spoke of these goddesses highly as exalted cranes. This was pleasing to his community, especially his uncle who worshipped Al-Uzza. Later, he said he was possessed by shaitan when he said that. He took it back with an admonishment to the ways of the pagan Arabs. How dare you ascribe daughters to Allah when you yourself bury your daughters in the desert? The message that modern day Arab Muslims take from that is clear given the cult-like preservation of misogyny in our community. The idea that women could be worshipped or valued for anything other than chastity is so taboo. We are made to feel wrong our whole lives, as not enough, as less than boys and men. If you do not ascribe to rigid gender roles and a certain way of life in many families, you're simply not welcome. It is a rare experience to witness an Arab Muslim person speak openly about sex because it is so taboo in our culture, even if you live in the diaspora. Everything that I am and all the things I like to do deviate from those norms. My whole existence is in opposition to them. This becomes a power struggle beyond the fight for my family and my people's freedom in the wider global context, beyond my desire to be accepted within my family, to be a part of them. It extends to a personal power struggle within myself to simply be who I am without unconsciously trying to change myself to fit in, knowing that if I don't have self-acceptance, no other type of acceptance matters. It's life or death, because if I can't be myself, there's no point in living. While there is so much sentiment within the sex worker rights community that this is just a job, a normal job, just like your job, for me, often my work is a place to not only survive, but to recreate myself into my own image, independent of the cult of misogyny I was born into. Like the goddesses I embody, I lost everything in my journey through the underworld. I accompanied all the parts of me that weren't me to their final resting places, making sure they arrived safely and with love while I was torn apart. When I began my ascent to heaven, I looked and felt vastly different than I had before. Life isn't a straight path, it's a spiral. As we spiral deeper in and closer to our source, the repetition speeds up, events get closer together. It takes less time to move through lessons. The journey becomes like an acid, mushroom, or ayahuasca trip in that you begin to see things in a new way and make previously unseen connections between different parts of your life. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's really cool for me to have done a previous iteration of this. Now to get to hear those of you who treated towards bodily autonomy now read different parts of body autonomy. It just feels like something new comes out to me every time. And I've read these things so many times, right? It's still giving me so much. I love it. I also love that you had a kitty in your chest all the time. Presto.
I wanted to open my segment up by can everybody hear me? Am I good? Are you good? Okay. Sometimes it gets a little funny in here. But I wanted to begin my reading by acknowledging the current overdose situation and just reading a short by a Jewish resistance fighter from the Holocaust. Like the way it's wounds, publicly flogged. I crawled up the streets carrying my concrete crosses to my goal with her. This is my cry of pain, protest, my nakedness and shame, and my futile sermons of laboriously written lines. So I want to start at page.
Pesto, before you start, you are coming in a little choppy, your audio, so maybe do you want to try turning your video off and seeing if that optimizes it a bit?
Sure. If that doesn't work, I could move in location, but I'll try that. How do I sound now?
Sound good. And I'll let you know in the chat if you're chopping up.
Better?
Yeah.
All right. Oops. One second, y'all. Let's go to the page. All right. So I want to start here. The poppy is a resilient plant, can grow in varied temperatures and soils around the world. Its resiliency would prove crucial as governments would begin targeting the plant for eradication, despite its history in numerous ancient civilizations as a medicine for several kinds of pain and sleeplessness, including the Sumerians, who have used the plant as far back as 2100 BCE. The international war on drugs, spearheaded by the United States and emulated by other nations, has sought to eradicate poppy in places like Afghanistan, where the United States assisted with funding the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan's counter-narcotics effort, resulting in the eradication of poppy farming throughout the nation. Destroying this plant means severing the connection the poppy has with the indigenous population who have used it as a source of economic prosperity and independence for millennia. I made my decision to try dope with a friend of mine and to see how it would feel. I tried a small amount, and it felt very similar to the Percocets and oxycodone I had tried before. But this time, it felt much warmer. That feeling of warmth, something like a hug at the perfect moment, overtook my whole body and went to places I had never felt connected to prior to that. The experience was deeply spiritual, and I felt in touch with my emotions. After that, I began to use the time that I would indulge in the drug for journaling and expressing myself to others. At times, I would have so much stress built up from the dysphoria that it was hard for me to focus on work, and even socializing was difficult. All of that was lifted off me during these times of bliss when engaging with Poppy. I respected it and kept my use under control by treating the times I was under its influence as sacred for me. I noticed that it was so much easier to talk with those I was intimate with about my issue of sex when I was under the influence of opioids, specifically heroin and fentanyl. I prefer heroin, but I know individuals who prefer the latter for recreational usage. However, I was still living with my parents at the time, so I still did not have even the slightest grasp of my gender ID. I'm gonna skip forward to page 247. Of course, which drugs are considered acceptable in our society comes from the intersection of race and class, a history of colonialism and power imbalances, where those who are deemed to be quote unquote other were and still are criminalized for the same things white people are not. The drug war in the US that sparked the mass incarceration boom of the 70s and 80s began with xenophobia, alongside the complete disregard of bodily autonomy of those indigenous to what we now know as the Americas, as well as enslaved people from Africa. During the presidencies of Roosevelt, Nixon, Reagan, and Clinton, targeting of Black and otherwise colonized individuals for drug raids and racketeering hit all-time highs. The public associated crack and heroin with use with Black urban centers, like where I grew up and now live in the Bronx. Outsiders looking into my neighborhood see our crumbling infrastructure and desperate need for decent mental health treatment and assume we do not care about our communities. Some of my community members have even internalized the sentiment that it is the neighborhood and its inhabitants that ultimately cause the everyday harms we experience. However, none of us as individuals had the power to abandon ourselves and to leave our families and friends in oftentimes horribly austere conditions. We are left in perpetual cycles of harm from the state's abandonment. For some individuals like myself, drug use relaxes the everyday aches and pains in Black and poor in the US. We're punished for having the audacity to reach for something different. We are criminalized as a result of our self-determination and resistance. In community with other trans and non-conforming individuals, the phrase gender euphoria is used as a counter to the dysphoria experience. Gender dysphoria comes from internal as well as external factors. We all have ideas in our heads about what a specific gender is supposed to look like or feel like. Myself carry internalized transphobia. I would like to say that gender euphoria is being able to wake up every day and live as exactly who you are, and that could be a different gender and sexuality for every day of every year for the rest of your life. I imagine it as being like water, ever so fluid and shifting in form based on the environment. It would also mean that externally, one is cherished by their community for whichever form they take, as so many people like to exclaim, but simply because we just are. Gender euphoria does not require any further justification to a society that has denied us our ability to self-determine anything about ourselves. To experience euphoria in gender without the gaze of systems could be as easy as breathing air. With the current unregulated street supply of drugs, it is possible that what has brought so much new joy and understanding into my life may also be what is responsible for my death. While heroin was formerly derived from the poppy plant itself, the current supply is mostly manufactured in labs, and stronger opioid analogs are entering the drug supply regularly. A regulated supply of drugs available for the public at cost, meaning with no profit incentive, would certainly reduce overdose numbers, as we've seen with the organization DOLF, the Drug User Liberation Front, which sells tested cocaine, heroin, MDMA, and methamphetamine in British Columbia at cost. No one who has ever purchased their drugs from DOLF has ever overdosed, since the group began distributing drugs they purchased off the dark web and tested themselves for purity. Both legalization and safe supply, with the harm reduction approach, would address the root causes of possible, quote-unquote, problematic drug use, like homelessness, mental illness, and trauma. Not a single individual needs to die from an overdose, and I believe that can be actualized utilizing harm reduction as a philosophy and pairing it with concrete action. Before I leave this earth, no matter which way it occurs, I owe all of my respect to the poppy plant. Without it, I may have missed out on some of the most beautiful, fun, and pleasurable experiences of my entire life. And it is very possible that there would be no me writing these words today. While trying my best to keep myself alive, I discovered that death is nowhere near the end because the mind and the spirit can both travel much further than the physical body can. Life and death are inextricably connected. Unfortunately, the damage from demonization and stigma prevents me from accessing this medicine and its pleasurable aspects in a safe way. But a large community that includes myself is fighting for that to change. Even through the struggle for the insight into the proximity of life and death, for a good night's sleep when my anxiety is literally paralyzing, for being able to stop and breathe when I've been crying for 20 minutes straight, I am forever grateful to the poppy.
Nieta, it's all so good. Hearing you read that, Presto, made me want to cry. Really glad that everyone else got to hear that too. Because Noelle and I have just been working on the background here, like getting to know all the good stuff, you know, and I'm just like, y'all, we actually built a house together. That's what just happened. Like, we just built a house together, and I'm just so grateful for all of your brilliance and your contributions and everything that you do in the world. And I hope that this little sliver that is your articles can make the impact that I know it can make. I hope that this book can get into all of the hands, right, of our lovers and our friends and our colleagues and our community members and the people who just need, you know, just have the little bit of readiness they need to be able to open in the way that this encourages them to. All of it. Thank you all so much. And I am really excited. I'm going to share my screen again. I am really excited that we have some representatives of amazing national organizations here with us today to talk about their work that they're doing to advance sex worker rights or to advance the rights of people of color who use and heal with psychedelics. And so let's see, I believe Melody is here with us from New Moon Network. Melody, can I turn it over to you to share a bit about your national work?
Melody is actually having some reception issues. So she sent me what she would like to say. And I work at New Moon as well. So if that's okay, I'm going to step in and do a really bad impression of Melody here. So my name again is Jay Lee, and Melody and I were both very honored to be able to be a part of this. And Melody's chapter is in the first iteration as well, which is fantastic. Please enjoy the Fuck Myself into Heaven, I believe is the yeah, it's great. And our organization is called New Moon Network. We are sex worker and survivor led, and we provide a wide range of support services for the community as community members. And the little spiel here I will read. Thank you so much for allowing the space to uplift the work of New Moon Network. 2 of our staff were contributors to Body Autonomy, including myself and Melody Garcia, who unfortunately had to drop off this call. And thank you, big thank you to Synergetic Press and to, of course, the lovely Justice Rivera for bringing this important piece of work, Body Autonomy, into existence. New Moon is a national organization dedicated to resourcing the sex worker rights movement. And we do this through regranting to sex worker and survivor-led organizations across the country, offering capacity building programs such as Spokes Hub, and through educating the philanthropic sector to mobilize resources to advance our movement. So we work really much like we are an intermediary fund working between spaces and the movement for grassroots organizers and organizations, as well as philanthropy in general. So we invite anybody who has lived experience in the sex trade to participate in Spokes Hub. It is a free online academy that is peer-led, and it's a peer sharing model. And our focus is to help advocates develop their voice as they advocate for their specific interest or intersectional passion within the sex trades. And we do compensate folks if you'd like to teach a class, if you have experience, $250. Money, 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 always nice. So please definitely reach out to us. We also built a directory of resources specifically to help advocate for adult industry reform. It's called AIR Directory. I'd like to highlight too that this intersection specifically around harm reduction, drug use, and sex work is one of like a concrete example of how our passion around sex work or our interest in sex work or our falling into sex work, wherever we land on that spectrum of experience, it very much ties into other aspects of our social justice work, as you've heard today. So yeah, that was my very bad impression of Melody, and I hope it was decent. And thank you just so much for bringing this important piece of work into existence. It's here. The house is here, as you say. So thanks.
Thank you so much, New Moon, for everything that you do. It's also a clutch. This is my favorite. And it's amazing that you all are really putting pressure on to and building up leaders. I don't know, Mira, tap, tap. You saw my little chat, but I think it'd be great for a class. I actually have a class coming up on May 22nd through Spokes Hub, which is really just unpacking the timeline, the Wars on Bodily Autonomy timeline from Body Autonomy that Kate Diadamo and Jasmine Tyler and I wrote together. So if you all want to see that in a format that's not just pages of table, come to this class. It's going to be really awesome. And next up, I am really excited to be a member of the POC Psychedelic Collective. And I'm really excited that you can find us here with us today to share more about the Ife, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Justice. Thank you for having me here and giving me the opportunity to share about the People of Color Psychedelic Collective. I also just want to say I really enjoyed listening to everyone's readings. Very powerful and inspiring, empowering. So thank you. Just a little bit about our organization. We are a nonprofit of people of color who seek to educate and build community among communities of color on ending the war on drugs and psychedelics. So we do everything from workshops, panels, collaborations, in-person events, that kind of thing. And we've been doing that for a few years. We really aim to bring a social justice lens to psychedelic work. And it's really just about fighting for everyone's freedom. Everyone deserves to feel free and be free and enjoy their bodies. And I think that, you know, as everyone in this room knows, there are so many parallels between sex worker rights and drug user liberation. So I also just want to share a little bit about me. I am the executive director, also a Soros Justice Fellow, connected with Justice through the Soros Justice Fellowship. I got into this work about a decade ago, sharing my story of what it means to be the daughter of a former drug dealer. My father and my mother were both in the drug game. My dad was sentenced to 15 years in prison and was deported after his drug sentence. And I really came into this work just talking about what it means to have a parent incarcerated, what are the impacts on children and the family? And that brought me into psychedelics. Psychedelics have been a part of my healing journey. And I think being in the psychedelic space, I saw that there's a lack of people who look like me, people with real life lived experiences of criminalization. I noticed that a lot of people in the psychedelic field shy away from conversations regarding, incarceration, criminalization. And so I always try to ground my work in my experiences. I really think of my parents as the people who taught me what I know and really guide my work. So that's just a little bit about me. I also just want to plug a little bit more about our work. If you visit our website, www.pocpc.org, and go to the bottom of our page, you can sign up for our email list, stay in touch. We'll be having some virtual and in-person events, everything from sound healing to educational, maybe a little academic workshops. I also lead a coalition that Justice has been a part of, the Psychedelic Alliance for Healing and Justice. We are a coalition of workers in the field, therapists, practitioners, folks who work in the retail side of psychedelics, coming together to build new narratives, do some activations, and combine our shared power. So thank you again for giving me the space to share a little bit about the organization. And if you're interested in connecting with me, feel free to reach out. I'll drop my email in the chat. We're always looking for speakers for our panels, and we also pay our speakers. So thank you again. Thank you, Justice. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, looking forward to connecting.
Yes. Do you see why I invited these organizations here? They're just amazing, right? And living in your values, paying the people. This shouldn't be revolutionary, right? But it is. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. And it was also cool to hear you and everything you do, because I think I only get little snapshots of that, so it's cool to hear you talk about it. And I've dropped how to follow New Moon Network and POC Psychedelic Collective. Thank you all for dropping your websites or your emails. Here's their IGs also if you want to follow, putting out some awesome stuff. It sounds like some of these contributors and maybe even some of the participants who are on this call are going to be doing some classes in the future, so I want to know all about it. It's amazing. I also want to honor our time. I told you all at the beginning I was really bad at time, so I'm sorry. Probably not gonna get to questions. It's just like a linear concept I have trouble fucking with. But support engagement. So we're going to be lots of different places, and really appreciate the opportunity to get to meet with folks and get to host some conversations. So first off, today is the first official day that our book has dropped. If you want to buy the book direct from the source, Synergetic Press, they are giving 25% off with the code FRIENDS25 right now. So that is on this slide. We're also dropping it in the chat, really trying to kind of encourage people to go direct to the source and support your publisher. Also support your local bookshop because it's going to be there. Regardless of if you get it on Amazon or Goodreads and not, and like no shade if that's what happens, because sometimes convenience is key. Either way, if you could please review us on Amazon and Goodreads, that is how we can get body autonomy in front of other people who are outside of our networks. Really being able to give us reviews and talk about what you liked, and of course an honest review, which is very much appreciated. So anytime after today, you should be able to do that. And I encourage you to share pictures of yourself with your copy of the book, or any kind of quote format or anything, and you can tag myself. I'm at Justice Rivera_Rights. Also, Synergetic Press is at Synergetic Press. And I'm very excited to announce, because I know that many of the collaborators haven't seen this yet, But we are like 90% done with our reader's guide, which I'm dropping here anyway. We have one spacing issue, which we're going to take care of. But we've been working for a couple months on putting together a number of questions to help people engage with the material, to reflect on your own learning and growth, and also to work with colleagues or collaborators on. And so here is a read-only copy of our 90% done edition. We'll take care of that in a bit, and I'll be kind of putting those questions on my Instagram and stuff moving forward too, but really excited to have that. And we'll continue trying to put different things out there like this. And so please follow me, follow the collaborators. We're putting things out all the time related to body autonomy. Collaborators, if you want to drop your Insta or your, I'm not going to call it X, your Twitter handle, then please go ahead and do that. So we'll have an opportunity to follow each other. We will have pretty soon, we'll be announcing we have a reading in New York City with Cinnamon Love and Presto and Jessica. I feel like some others that's coming up on June 20th. We're kicking off summer in New York City at Blue Stocking Books. So that's going to be coming up. And so folks will have opportunity to see us in person there. And then we have some other readings that we are working on. If you would like to see us at a bookstore near you, please just hit us up. That's something we would love some, support with getting plugged into bookstores or anything like that. And we'll also have some virtual conversations the rest of the year. We're going to have one with Camille, who wrote our foreword, and Cinnamon, who wrote our afterwards. And with that, I'm really excited that everyone is dropping your IG and has opportunities to follow. And so, since we don't have time for questions, I just want to open up the floor to congratulations, because I feel like we have 3 minutes for congratulations instead. If you have a question, a burning question, please open it up too. But if folks want to just share the love for each other, for this collaborative, if this is a loved one that you came to see today, if you really loved the book and wanted to come and engage with us, this is just a couple minutes to just share some love together. Get the vibes high for the rest of the night.
I just wanted to say congrats to you, Justice, because having been part of the first, like slinging the books at the conferences and, like seeing all the additions and the birth of body autonomy. Now it's so good and it's so beautiful. And yeah, thank you for stewarding that for everybody and bringing these incredible humans together.
I'm so
Yes,
grateful.
congratulations and thank you, Justice, for bringing all of us together. This was so beautiful. I loved hearing all of y'all's contributions. It was just, yeah, really, really such a beautiful space. And also about y'all's work with the POC Psychedelic Collective and also the New Moon Network. I hadn't heard of it. So it's just, yeah, I really appreciate it tonight. Thank y'all.
Yes, and one more time, I want to say just such a huge thank you to Synergetic Press. You all see Noelle, and there is a team behind Noelle that's been so amazing to work with. Allison did the formatting, and Jasmine has been doing all the communications. Jasmine made this slide deck, thank goodness, because mine was busted. So just, really appreciate that, and I really appreciate all of you. This has been amazing, and I know this is just, this is just part of it. We continue on talking about the book and the work that we do, and being able to have a tangible way in which we can, give to people some of the things that we are passing on. I'll say for me, Reframe Health and Justice, where I'm a consultant, like the Mechanics of the Sex Trade essay is basically our sex worker harm reduction plan, right? And so we all made accessible forms of education, the things we're doing every day, and put it into a less than $25. So I just love this book as an access